cold and dark. I hope that intro wasn't too cheesy. So today's cold and dark episode, we will be starting with the Cessna 152. As you can see from the screen, I am currently at the outside of a general airport here, stood outside of a Cessna 152 with the ready to fly button in the bottom right. This is basically how you start free flight. For today's video, and for this whole series, as little as possible, no keyboard, no mouse. I will be using 4 devices attached to my PC. I've got the Tobii head tracker, eye tracker for navigating around the cockpit. I have the Honeycomb Alpha Yoke. I got the Honeycomb Bravo Throttle quadrant, and I have an Xbox controller. And the Xbox controller, before you scream foul, put your pitchforks away. The Xbox controller is just for the part of the game where you're outside of the aircraft. I just find it, even when I do have the keyboard and mouse in reach, I find it easier just to use that. So, let's get started. So, I'm just going to hit the reset button on the Tobii eye tracker because it starts the camera a little bit further away. Okay, we are stood outside of our Cessna 152. Beautiful. Let's remove the pitot cover. And we're going to remove the chocks. That's all we got to remove on this guy. There's no engine covers, no other things. So we can now jump into the aircraft. Open the door. In we go. Door should automatically be closed. And we're going to put our controller down. Alright, I'm just going to hit reset on the head tracker again so I get a proper head placement. So, for the pre-flight internal inspection, we need to run through the following steps. 1, parking brake needs to be set. I have that set here. I can click it, and you can see that it's set. The ignition needs to be in the off position. Check. The battery switch needs to turn on. And the reason for this is just to check the fuel quantity. For some reason here, they want you to do a pre-fuel check. There's probably good reasons for it. It's a little superfluous when you can set it in the sim, but in real life, I imagine that's useful. Okay, fuel shutoff valve needs to be open. Check. Battery switch back off. Okay. Next step, starting the actual engine. So we need to make sure the mixture is rich. I have that assigned to a quadrant, so rich is pushed all the way in. Carburetor needs to be set to cold in. This isn't variable like that one, so this is assigned to a button, which I've assigned to my 3rd button here. So carburetor needs to be cold, which is pushed in. Now we need to prime the engine. This is the 5th button along. This is another one that I didn't like the assignment for, but the way I've worked is you click it, and you can kind of get the prime action by clicking it on and off. Yeah, it's a little bit clunky, but engine is now primed. Throttle, open 1/4 inch. I think that's probably good. Now we turn the master switch and the batteries back on. At this point, we would yell propeller out the window at everyone, but the neighbor mowing the yard doesn't appreciate me doing that for simming purposes, so we'll skip it. Turn the engine all the way on. We are live. We check our oil pressure is green, that's down here. Our oil pressure is just on the green. Now, before takeoff, we are told to have our strobe light on. So strobe light on. And then we would begin to set beacon and navigation lights as part of the rest of the process that we would do en route to the airport. So that is a cold and dark startup on the Cessna. I'm going to just shut everything back off. Parking brake still on. Lights off. Avionics off, engine off. Now, this is one of the simplest aircraft to do this on, so there really isn't too much finessing needed. The biggest hurdle I hit was with the engine starting, and I actually covered that in an entire tutorial video, so I'll link that up there or somewhere. I'll link there. But that essentially allows you to do the full kind of key press, and you can see the key rotating. Without the change there, I couldn't get that to work consistently. Let's talk about the fuel valve for a second. If you were paying attention there and you saw me go fuel valve check, you might have been thinking, hold on a second, should we not check that fuel valve is open? And yeah, absolutely, in the real world you should. At this point, I am going to need the keyboard and mouse for the simulator, so if we go through our points of view, I'm going to turn the head tracker off for a second. This is our fuel valve. It's way the heck out the way. You would struggle to see that with the keyboard and the mouse. And judging by the shape and position of this, it's obviously designed for something that somebody can reach down where they're sat and just check. And if it's not set correctly, they can tell by feel and fix it. It has two states. Currently it's open, so the valve right there is set in the open state. If it's closed, it's pointed up at 12 o'clock. Now the default in Flight Simulator is that this will be open. So is it necessary to check this? Probably not, because when you click free flight and you drop into the simulator, you receive an instance of the aircraft in a defaulted state. Yes, there are settings that can be applied with your peripherals that will change the default state if they're so configured, but we're not touching that here, so it's not a risk. I don't have anything on those mapped to that state for that reason. So do I need to check it? No, I don't. But in the interest of simming, if we add the stream box into the equation, we can map the fuel valve open and closed actions to our mapping, and that lets us then just do it by pushing. All of this was a rather long way of saying that visually checking the fuel valve is almost impossible to do due to the positioning of the actuator. That essentially leaves two simple choices for how to handle this. One is just to assume that it is open because it will default to that state, and if you don't map any kind of switch that will override that as the sim springs to mind, there's no reason to think that it would not be open. The alternative is to bind a push button to the fuel valve open command. This is what I've done with the Stream Dock. So during the checklist, I can hit this button, know that the fuel valve will be open, and bypass the visible check. The final things that I've mapped to, just to put some functionality where I want it a little easier, is I did move the fuel primer to a push button. This feels a little more organic than just using a on-off switch, and you could kind of see the difference there. So I prefer this to the on-off switch, but this is kind of the luxury rollout. Like if you didn't have this option, then the on-off switch works just fine. I set the cabin lights to a on-off switch here, just so if you're doing nighttime flights, you can quickly access those. They don't map. There is no mapping on the Alpha Yoke to cabin lights, so that's nice to have. And then I got the engine de-ice. Which is also known as the carburetor, set for a push button as well. So some of these are a bit redundant based on how the rest of the hardware is set, but it's just more of a quality of life improvement for the overall sim. So not necessary, but just nice to have. So that concludes the cold and dark start on the 152. The astute watching may wonder, well, what about radio comms, and what about, for instance, setting the transponder? Excellent questions. I'm going to cover some of that in a later video. I'm just not fully organized on that front yet. But that concludes today's. Any questions or comments? I'd love to hear them. If you've got things set up different, would love to know how you tackled some of the problems. This aircraft's fairly basic, not a ton of wiggle room, but that doesn't mean that this is necessarily the best way to do it. So would love to hear from you. And if you like this video and want to see more, be sure to like and subscribe. Next aircraft will probably be the 172. Cessna 172. Thank you. Bye. Well, that's a wrap on that one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. If you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button. And remember, I'm not actually a pilot. I'm just a dumbass with a flight simulator. Catch you on the next one.